You need to drive hours away from the city to do astrophotography. That's what I believed for years until I captured this galaxy from my Bortle 5 backyard. Most aspiring astrophotographers think they need pristine dark skies, but I'm about to show you why that's completely wrong. In this video, I'll reveal how I went from getting washed out, disappointing images to capturing stunning deep space objects without ever leaving my light polluted backyard. If you've been putting off astrophotography because you live in a city, this might be the most important tutorial you'll ever watch. Recent studies show even professional observatories in Chile deal with increasing light pollution. And I can confirm this because I have taken some data and tried to process it that was taken in some pretty impressive high altitude observatories, and there was still a lot of light pollution to deal with. This means that you can still get great results from your backyard with the right techniques. I'll walk you through the exact methods that let me photograph galaxies and nebulae despite the light pollution from streetlights. We'll cover practical filters, smarter shooting locations, and processing tricks that reveal hidden details. The best part? You probably already own most of the gear you need to get started tonight. Picture setting up your telescope in your backyard, only to see an orange haze instead of all those lovely stars. This is what most urban astrophotographers face immediately. Light pollution doesn't just make the sky brighter, it reduces contrast between objects and the background and shifts colors towards warmer tones. Even in places like Chile's Coquimbo region, where professional observatories operate, artificial light still affects the sky. A study found that Fray Jorge National Park, considered a protected dark sky area, still has 4% of its night brightness coming from artificial sources. Las Campañas Observatory, home to the future Giant Magellan telescope, deals with 11% artificial sky brightness, primarily from distant cities. This proves even remote locations aren't completely free from light interference. The difference between shooting in a Bortle 9 city sky and a Bortle 4 suburban location is absolutely staggering. In heavy light pollution, broadband imaging, which captures wide wavelength ranges, is nearly impossible without extreme measures to cut down light pollution. Exposure times may need to be as short as 10 to 30 seconds to prevent overexposure. Meanwhile, the same target in darker skies might allow exposures minutes long with far better contrast. Surprisingly, moonlight also affects our images in the same way as city lights do. During bright phases, it can wash out faint deep sky objects, forcing careful planning around lunar cycles. Many beginners don't realize this until after struggling with washed out images. The frustration is absolutely real, as I can confirm myself when trying to photograph a faint galaxy under an urban or moon glow, only to find the background sky is brighter than the target itself. But there is good news. Narrowband imaging, which isolates specific light wavelengths like hydrogen alpha or oxygen 3, can cut through light pollution even in Bortle 9 skies. Filters as precise as 3 nanometers wide block most unwanted light, revealing nebulae and other emission objects that broadband can't. Timing also helps. Shooting during new moon phases maximizes darkness, whether under city lights or not. The challenges are clear. Light pollution limits exposure times, reduces contrast, and distorts your colors. Yet the solutions do exist. With strategic filters and careful planning, urban astrophotography isn't just possible, it can produce amazing results. The key is adjusting your techniques rather than giving up on location alone. How does this actually affect your ability to capture the night sky? Bright gradients make framing difficult. Star visibility drops dramatically, meaning autofocus seems a struggle. Longer exposures, which would normally gather faint details, instead get flooded with artificial glow. But as we'll see next, the right tools can counteract these issues. Let's examine now the equipment and methods that can turn these limitations into manageable obstacles. Surprisingly, some of the most effective solutions don't require expensive gear, just a smarter approach to what you already own. The moon's phases, light pollution maps, and even local buildings can become assets rather than enemies in urban astrophotography. Whether shooting emission nebulae or distant galaxies, the problems are consistent, but the workarounds are well documented. What if you could find decent astrophotography spots without leaving your city? Many overlook subtle differences in local conditions that can make urban shooting possible. Light pollution varies block by block, and small adjustments in location choice can dramatically improve results. Websites like lightpollutionmap.info reveal surprising dark pockets in unexpected places, sometimes just a short drive from heavily lit areas. Position matters more than absolute darkness. Setting up against a building or natural barrier blocks direct ground lighting that ruins your exposures. A parking garage roof, the shadowed side of a hill, or even your own backyard with strategic tarp placement can create usable imaging conditions. The goal isn't to eliminate light pollution completely. That's impossible in cities, but to minimize its worst effects through physical barriers. This approach works because most disruptive light comes from horizontal spill, not the sky itself. Moon phases impact urban astrophotography more than many realize. During full moon periods, even Bortle 4 locations become challenging for deep sky imaging. Conversely, new moon windows offer the best opportunities regardless of artificial light pollution. Apps like Photopills or Stellarium show exact moonrise and moonset times, helping plan sessions around these natural brightness cycles. Some urban photographers exclusively shoot 3 days before to 3 days after new moon for maximum effectiveness. A case study from Chicago shows what's possible with careful location scouting. One photographer found a Bortle 5 zone near Montrose Harbor by positioning equipment between lakefront trees that blocked downtown light domes. The same principle applies to suburban areas. Parks surrounded by residential neighborhoods often have noticeably better conditions than shopping districts just blocks away. Even small improvements matter when stacking exposures later. When I come to do my imaging, I've got a set spot which I like to use, which uses a house to basically shelter me from the nearby street lamps, which are up quite high in the sky. And I found like a pocket of shadow, and this really helps me to image. Weather conditions can also create temporary advantages too. High pressure systems often mean clearer but more light polluted skies, while certain types of haze can paradoxically improve contrast by scattering artificial light differently. Foggy nights sometimes offer the best urban astro conditions because water droplets diffuse and soften harsh point sources like streetlights. These micro opportunities require flexibility but reward those who monitor forecasts closely. Timing strategies extend beyond moon phases. The pre-dawn hours often show better transparency as human activity decreases and atmospheric conditions stabilize. This astronomical twilight period before dawn frequently provides the cleanest urban skies of the entire night. The key is treating light pollution as a manageable condition rather than an absolute barrier. Now let's examine the equipment that specifically counters urban challenges. Certain filters and camera models perform dramatically better than others. under light polluted conditions, often making more difference than traveling to slightly darker locations would warrant. The right gear choices can effectively move you one or two Bortle classes closer to ideal conditions without changing your physical location. Simple filters like these ones that I use can reveal what's invisible to your eyes under city skies. Light pollution filters work by blocking specific artificial light wavelengths from street lights and buildings, while allowing the natural starlight to pass through. There are two main types: broadband filters and narrowband filters. Broadband filters cut out common light pollution sources such as mercury and sodium vapor lamps. These work well for general night sky photography, allowing you to capture star clusters and brighter galaxies. The difference is clear in before and after shots. Images go from washed out orange to showing actual stars against a darker background. However, broadband still struggles with faint, deep sky objects under heavy light pollution. Exposure times often max out at 30 seconds before artificial glow overwhelms the shot. Narrowband filters, on the other hand, take a much more targeted approach. They isolate specific wavelengths emitted by nebulae like hydrogen alpha, which often glows red, at 656 nanometers, or oxygen 3 at 501 nanometers. With band passes as tight as 3 nanometers, they block nearly all light pollution. Although I have to say, the filter that I use is 15 nanometers wide, and this suffices for me. The use of narrowband filters allows surprisingly long exposures even at Bortle 9 skies, up to 300 seconds per sub exposure. I've captured the Veil Nebula, for example, from my backyard, which is Bortle 5 or 6, and I've managed to expose for up to 10 minutes or even more without too much problem. The result of this shows intricate nebula structures impossible to see with broadband under the same conditions. So where do I actually place my filters? I thread them directly onto my telescope's optical path. Cheaper filters can be quite good if you're not ready to invest in premium filters, and some of them can actually cost several hundreds of dollars each. Basic light pollution filters start around $50, and they still improve contrast quite incredibly. I have used a variety of filters in the past, but now mainly use Optolong's L Pro filter for RGB and broadband shots. And I also use a narrowband filter, which is as well duoband, 15 nanometers, which captures HA and O3. This is quite a cheap option. In fact, came free with my camera, but I do get good results from it. Narrowband is of course great for cutting out light pollution, but your stars may appear dimmer since most of their light gets blocked alongside the pollution. Broadband targets like galaxies and star clusters often look better without these filters. The kind of filter that you want to use will depend on your local light pollution spectrum. If you've got sodium vapor lamps, you probably benefit most from blocking 589 nanometer wavelengths. LED street lights emit a broader spectra, requiring much more aggressive filters. Websites like Astrospheric can help you determine which filter you should use in specific locations. Proper filter use requires adjustment of your exposure techniques. Narrowband shots need longer individual exposures, but fewer of them are possible. If you'd like to check out my exposure calculator, you can check exactly the difference between exposure times using different filters, broadband or narrowband, and the link is in the description. Use of these filters often changes colors, so you may need to correct this in post. One thing I would advise though, when you do use filters, especially light pollution filters, they may change your colors. So you may need to actually adjust this in your post-processing. Tools like filters don't eliminate light pollution completely, they just help you cope with it. A 3 nanometer HA filter won't make your city sky like a desert, but it will reveal nebula details otherwise lost in the sky glow. Combined with the location tricks we've discussed earlier, filters let you capture professional grade astrophotos without leaving town. And the real magic happens, of course, when these filtered images hit your editing software. Raw files contain hidden data that processing can extract, turning very faint signals into amazing celestial images. A nebula that looks like a dirty smudge on your camera display often holds intricate structures waiting to be revealed with your processing. This leads us to this next crucial step, which we need to consider: post-processing techniques. We can use post-processing techniques that extract hidden details while minimizing light pollution effects. Your first step should always be shooting in RAW format. This gives you maximum flexibility when stretching, adjusting, and correcting colors later. Color correction solves one of light pollution's worst effects: the sky cast or gradient. Begin by sampling a supposedly black sky area to set a custom white balance. From there, adjust individual color channels to neutralize dominant tints. In that way, you'll get a really true black. Cyril's background extraction tool removes light pollution gradients effectively through automatic modeling. This is the feature of Cyril which I always use immediately upon. After I stack my images, I always apply background extraction to take away as much of the light pollution as I can before I get to stretching anything. Check how easy this is in this example of M106, which I recently imaged under Bortle 5 skies. Make sure you do background extraction early. As I said, you need to remove the gradients before stretching, otherwise it won't work very well. In light polluted shots, it becomes harder and harder to reveal the fainter details, such as the dust surrounding this galaxy. The more exposures you stack, the better, as you can see, comparing my processed image of 74 sub-exposures, each of 300 seconds, to the one with 134 sub-exposures. The difference between the total integration time is 370 minutes compared to 670 minutes. Or in other words, the first image is 6 hours and the second image is just over 10. And I think you can see the difference and how I managed to pull out much more detail in the outer dust of the galaxy in the second image, despite the level of light pollution. Can we completely edit out the effects of light pollution? Or, as the myths have it, you'd need to go to the very darkest skies you can to take great images. The difference between Bortle 9 and Bortle 4 skies becomes obvious when you compare side-by-side images captured with identical equipment. Take a look at this photograph of the Triangulum galaxy M33. One taken in Bortle 4 showed significantly more detail than the Bortle 9 backyard version. That urban image required 115 minutes of exposure time to approach similar quality, over 4 times longer to compensate for the light pollution. The comparison demonstrates how much more data you need to collect in bright skies to overcome the washed out background. Looking at individual exposures tells another story. A single 300-second sub from Bortle 4 reveals far more contrast and faint detail than the same length exposure from Bortle 9. City skies essentially eat into your signal-to-noise ratio, forcing longer total integration times. For broadband targets like galaxies, you might need 5 to 10 times more exposure in light pollution compared to dark sites. Narrowband imaging fares better. Hydrogen alpha filters can cut through the orange glow effectively enough that your exposure multiplier might drop to just 2 to 3 times compared to very dark skies. Some targets, though, actually work better in urban environments. Planets and the moon shine brightly enough so that light pollution barely affects them. In fact, city locations often offer steadier atmospheric conditions than remote windy sites. I've captured some of my best planetary images from a Bortle 8 backyard because the air happened to be exceptionally stable that night. The Andromeda Galaxy provides an encouraging urban target. Even from my light-polluted backyard, a stack of 100 one-minute exposures revealed dust lanes and hints of neighbouring galaxy M110. While not Hubble quality, it proved that deep sky objects remain accessible from cities. The key was shooting during new moon phase and positioning my scope to minimize direct light pollution sources. Practical decisions can emerge when comparing locations. If a target requires more than 8 hours of urban exposure to match 2 hours at a dark site, the drive might be worthwhile. But for objects needing just 2 to 3 times more time of integration, staying home makes more sense. Narrowband projects often fall into this manageable category. I regularly shoot emission nebulae from my backyard that would require driving hours to image in broadband. Gradients pose the toughest challenge. Even with filters, long exposures often show uneven illumination across the frame. Advanced processing helps, but some gradients require manual brushing to fix. Dark sites simply don't have this issue. Therefore, if you go and image in a dark site, you'll save yourself a lot of time in editing. Moon phase does affect urban imaging. While a quarter of a moon might not ruin dark sky sessions, it can completely wipe out urban attempts at faint objects. I keep a list of brighter targets like open clusters specifically for moonlit nights. Lately, I haven't worried so much about the moon, providing that my equipment is pointing a set number of degrees away from the moon. Except for the full moon, I can still image, especially with narrowband. Equipment choices do shift between locations. In cities with higher light pollution, you can use faster optics. And at dark sites, you can use slower optics because you can take long exposures. The same camera produces different results depending on location. My cooled astronomy camera shows less difference between sites than an unmodified DSLR. Testing both environments teaches us valuable lessons. After imaging M33 from a Bortle 9 and a Bortle 4, I understood exactly how much more effort urban astronomy requires. But I also confirmed that with enough exposure and proper processing, even challenging targets remain within my reach. This knowledge has helped me plan efficient sessions based on target difficulty and available time. These comparisons ultimately show light pollution is a hurdle but not a roadblock. The Bortle 4 shots will always look better with less effort, but Bortle 9 images can still showcase the same celestial objects and look great. With adjusted techniques and realistic expectations, urban astrophotography delivers satisfying results while building skills that translate perfectly to when you are at a dark site.